You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.
We're chatting with David DuByne here on Radiant Creators, and thanks for being on the show, David. It's amazing to have you on again. It's great to catch up. It's been a little while. Much has happened in the world, and this is actually not streaming live because just having endless troubles getting live streaming to work. That was kind of the plan, but it just didn't pan out. So it's just you and me here, and then everybody will see this later. So thanks for being on, and how are things going in your neck of the woods? You've been through emotional turmoil. You have had to move recently. You're not sure what's happening with your old apartment. I mean, life's been you have been living the upheaval. So how are you coming back to reality?
Just living in the flux and knowing that the flux is here and the constant change is going to be the new permanent. So to understand that right away and be able to deal with it, luckily through my life, I've been traveling quite a bit. Used to backpack around in the 90s, a little more upscale these days, dragging the luggage. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm used to things going wrong, things getting canceled, something doesn't work out, you pivot on a dime into plan B within a second, and summing things up and, situations and just moving where you can, when you can. Nothing in the world's a known at the moment, and there's so much flux, change going on. See, my whole thing was with this grand solar minimum, the awareness in 2021 of the crop losses, and it appears we're back at it again of the no harvest, or I should say no plant 19. This is going to be no plant 20. Also, we can anticipate a lower yield this year because, some of the crops that were stranded in the field last year that the USDA booked in as yield, when it flooded up about 1.5 feet, and when it froze solid after the water had drained away, there was a sheet of ice covering part of the field, and that was still considered bookable quality yield coming in. So the reality of understanding there wouldn't be enough food without skyrocketing food prices and competition everywhere across this planet from this year forward, now suddenly the same things we talked about, locking down the planet, economic collapse to keep people where they are so they couldn't migrate to other locations like Indonesia or equatorial areas with better grow conditions, cheaper environments, better food, more access to foods, all seems to be happening at the same time here. And I talked about, and you as well, with the smart contracts, cryptocurrency for a lot of movement in grains and deliveries. It looks like we're heading right there now. South Korea just legalized cryptocurrency. India called the bank holiday. But then at the same time, in the same day, they also legalized cryptocurrency for buy-sell trade. So a lot of these things with the grand solar minimum timelines and what was happening in a progression there until we get to the point where there just simply won't be enough on the planet at 2023-ish. And now, as Valentina Zarkova's articles have been removed off the net, proving that same year with the same timeline, her articles got taken away off the net. Anywhere she was published, they're like, oh, we got to take it away. We got too many complaints. You talking about the sun and not CO2, even though it was peer-reviewed in the beginning, allowed to be published. Now, just last week, I think it was May 5th, they removed everything that she'd published off the net. So what's going on here with the whole timeline's setting up as such, removal of information on peer-reviewed science and studies, and I'm wondering where the fertilizer is going to come from this year. So everything's setting up. You think about fertilizers coming in from China. How are our own farmers going to have enough in that supply chain for the fertilizers, the pesticides, the herbicides, fungicides? It's going to get really wet this year again. You can see the Mississippi River, record flooding. So you can anticipate a real wet planting season again. And as such, like last year with the mold and the fungus on the crops, a real huge problem. So where are all this massive supply chain of the things that we use that are manufactured in China going to come in for our farming and our growth and our crops and our yields this year in the United States, Canada, and other places too? I mean, Europe's just as reliant on fertilizer production out of China as we are.
Yeah, and that's the thing about fertilizer, having done some farming. I mean, if you're small scale, like under, 10, 20, 50 acres even, you can buy compost, you can buy fertilizer, locally, but that's the thing. If everybody wants it, it's not going to be there very long. And when it comes to big agribusiness, the big farms, not a chance. And especially if that price gets inflated. So if there's only so much so many tons of composted cow manure, because you can't just put cow poop on the field. It kind of causes problems. You got to compost it first. Mushroom compost is great. Then even making compost, farmers do make it, but that's more the smaller organic farmers that make their own compost, because that's a lot of effort. You got to have old crops to use. You got to have oftentimes, you raid the old Christmas trees and things like that. There's a lot of effort that goes into making your own, and then of course, like I say, you can buy it, but farming, especially organic farming, you really are. You kind of just get by. You can make a living, but you just get by. It's no one really is getting, that I've ever met, is really getting wealthy doing it. They're doing okay, And if your fertilizer, if you can't afford it, if it just doubles in price, you'd be out of luck. That would bring be very hard for farmers in this country. Like I'm thinking more of the smaller organic ones, but really, they could get by a year or two without composting, buying that fertilizer, but it would start to have kind of an immediate effect. After a couple of years, we'd have a lot of problems, and I'd never really thought of fertilizer as far as compost coming from other countries. I don't know if that does or not, but definitely the fertilizers, the chemicals that the big agribusiness uses, one thing people have to keep in mind is that their fields are dead. Basically, like your larger agribusiness, their fields are not quite as healthy as an organic farmer's. So if they don't use the chemicals, they're not going to grow much of anything. And their whole setup is not built around mixing in compost and such. So yeah, it is amazing how something small like that, even like the price of compost in this country going up a few percent, can devastate, just basically make it uneconomical for smaller farmers to farm.
You have to come up with some innovative solutions to try to do organic compost at that point. But yeah, coming back to the main agribiz here, I mean, they're set up with the flow of the supply chain just in time to get, they're not sitting on, 60,000 tons or 1 million tons of fertilizer in the back shed over there waiting for next planting season. That comes in during these months. It should be flowing in at the moment. And I think I sent you the link to that video where the dock worker was out there at Long Beach and
Yes.
She's like, there's no containers here. What's going on? So if that's truly, well, a lot of it's break bark anyway. So when it comes in, it's break bark cargo. It's not containerized to come in and, sit on the docks like that. It comes in a ship, and that entire hold is filled with however many tons they're running on the vessels. And then it's just one specific type of, they're probably in 100-pound bags to that point, 60-pound bags. And it's just, 60,000 tons of that is one single specific type of constituent, or maybe it's the finished fertilizer. A lot of times they're bringing the component parts in and they're reconstituting it here and then turning it into what they want, because the NPK, the different formulations that they have, not every agribusiness is going to need the exact same based on what the soil is. So if you have clay soils, it's going to be very different than if you have rocky soils or some kind of volcanic in there. There's a whole bunch of, I would say, variables as well. Northeast, Southwest in the United States, very different soil composition wise. So, yeah.
Well, that video you did send, that the empty port supply chain breaks, and that's a video. I'll link to that in the show notes, and that's really one people should check out. A lady who's a trucker, and she was down there at the port, and she's going through the machine basically where you pull in your truck and you get loaded up and off you go, and she was mentioning how it should be the size of a city with the containers, the Connex boxes stacked up, and they weren't there. And so that really, I think, brings a lot of reality to the situation when you realize, like, wow, this should be full. And I knew somebody who actually had driven by that location, knew it, and was saying, yeah, it's usually, it looks like a city. It's huge, stacked as high as buildings, like as far as you can see, and now it's empty. And so that is a surprising immediate effect of the you could say the coronavirus there in Asia, which of course is now here and is spreading everywhere. But that should be very sobering when people watch that. And that's the thing, we're figuring these things out. We're learning about this truly, it seems, through independent journalism, social media, people picking up their phone like she did. Because how do you feel the mainstream media is covering I'm getting zero. How about you?
Yeah, I'm getting about a -5. And if I was going to give a grade, how you went to school and you got A, B, C, D, I think I would give them like a Z minus for the way they're handling it, being forthcoming. Like, so for example, they keep, well, see, at least like CNBC and a few other the news networks that are doing financial analysis are saying, hey, things are getting back. At least the Chinese government says people are getting back. I talked to somebody in Shanghai yesterday, a friend of mine who lives there. Firsthand information from somebody I know personally. Yesterday was the first day they were allowed out to go buy food. They had to get a special blue card, and they were allowed to go out in their neighborhood. If you were caught in the wrong neighborhood, you'd be arrested. Only in the local neighborhood. And so I don't define local neighborhood. I don't know. I should have asked a more specific question. It was like 6 blocks radius or 5 block radius. What do you mean by local neighborhood? I forgot to ask. But anyway, local neighborhood means, you go outside your building, and generally within 4 or 5 blocks, there's a bunch of stores and things. That's the way the cities are all set up there. So you have every convenience within a few blocks of walking, less than a mile or half mile, something. First time they've been allowed out to go buy food yesterday. So when you hear about all these things like, hey, it's getting back to normal, getting back to normal. Well, wait, I talked to somebody who said yesterday they're not even allowed to leave to go buy food, and that's Shanghai. And you got to realize, like, Suzhou's next to there. What else is down that way? If you head south and go to the east, you come to Ningbo. And that's a huge outbound port there. That's one of the largest in the country. And then you got Shanghai, Suzhou. And then if you head up that east coast there, you get up to Tianjin, which is still closed down. So, what you're seeing, it's kind of like this girl's videos that she was a port worker herself inside the port, waiting for cargo, nothing coming, and had an entirely different set of, on the ground reports. And, it's the same thing in China, getting on ground report versus what the media is saying. It's two completely different things. So is it really to alleviate fear? Is it to push or prod the population in a certain direction? I mean, there's got to be a method to the madness for the news releases.
It seems
or
like
lack thereof. I could say that in both directions.
Yeah, and it seems like some of the financial analysis we see here, I mean, well, there's all kinds. I mean, you can go to Zero Hedge and you get one kind there. But as we look at it, I think if I do watch the mainstream media a little bit, there does tend to be a bit of a dismissiveness towards it, and don't worry, things are going to get better and such. Well, it does seem that it's only the Western media that is saying this is going to recover quickly, because I haven't heard anything out of China specifically, really. And from what I understand, and I guess I'm lucky enough to know a person or two who's got, well, same as you, who has connections in China. I know somebody who's got a business partner in China that has a factory, etc. So I've got, we have a little bit of connections there to see in a bit. And the feedback I was getting was that in China, there really is no talk about getting back online anytime quickly. That's strictly something you're seeing in the media here, But as far as there, they're not planning on it. They've got their other issues to deal with right now. And getting back online, that's just a myth that's being pushed over here. Does that jive with what you've been hearing?
Yeah, it does. And another thing that I've been getting a little information of is, so we have Kansas for our main wheat belt, and you understand Kansas is the middle of the center of the grain crop production in America. Well, unbeknownst to your
And we're back.
Hit the record button again. I didn't record that session. I know
I
you
got
had
it
recorded on your end there, so I'll try to start recording on my end too. You think we can both record, or is it just your side? Just to back it up.
Oh yeah, we can both record. Yeah, the recording that I'm using it for Skype, it's a call recorder they call it, and it records local over here. So.
Oh yeah, because I was using Pamela for a while too. All right, let me just jump right back in there. Jump in on that thought in 3, 2, 1. So if you take the thought of Kansas being our central in the grain production in the United States, Hubei, that area there, that province, and Henan, the next province next to it, and Wuhan is the capital of Hubei there. That is the center of the center of the center, equivalent to Kansas in the production of grain in China. So those people are still locked down. The periphery from there is locked down. Beijing still has the quarantine going on. Like I said, my friend said they just got out yesterday from Shanghai. So how are they going to plant this year? Because you've seen those crazy videos where the farmers were preparing some of their fields. This guy's out in like 50 acres by himself with a hoe. This local guy, I've seen tons of those traveling around the countryside. Just a guy by himself out in his own field. And then the police see him slam the brakes on and then just run out of the middle field and arrest him out there for not wearing a mask. And this is a local farmer, and when I say that, literally in the back 40 by himself, there was nobody within him. Like you couldn't see any other person in the entire view. Now imagine standing from the road and looking, 500 yards out and seeing nothing, just field and a guy with a hoe out there, and then they went out and arrested him. Like, what is going on there with the farming? So when it comes down to what you're talking about, the agribusiness getting out in the fields, how are they going to plant this year? And if they don't plant, then what kind of strain does that put on the world market for them, the Chinese buyers, to then jump in on the auctions and try to get corn and wheat and soy and all these other things that they rely on? Like soy is much more relied on as a food source than it is in the U.S. Like soy is the base of the breakfast over there. With so many soy products, it eclipses anything that we have here. If you think there's a bunch of soy milk in the store or whatever, that's just a fraction of truly how much it's included in the diet in China and Asia in general. But in China, it is the focal point for the breakfast and then the snacks through the day as well. So do we have enough to sell them? Does Argentina have enough? Does Brazil have enough? Is there going to be extra? How about the Ural Mountains production out of Russia there? Are they going to have enough extra wheat to supply China? Would they want to politically? So where's the price going to go? And if we're going to have late planting again this year, low yields, China's offline. Who else? Australia, lowest recorded ever yields this year ever, even lower than the 1980s. So, where's all the extra grain crops going to come from for production for what we eat? That's my biggest question.
Yeah, and we're in the midst of a lot of turmoil, which does not make it any easier because, of course, the coronavirus has kind of taken the center stage recently, but the GSM has not gone away, and it does seem that's one thing I've noticed is that there's lots of world events, a lot going on that really isn't getting covered. The front page is all taken up with coronavirus stuff now, all of a sudden. And so, there was that story that I saw. The Reserve Bank of India said it had no alternative but to take control of the bank, replace its board, and temporarily restrict withdrawals. And that's like the now, I guess, credit union or lending union. It's some kind of a bank in India, but it's huge. And so over the weekend, the next
fourth
thing
largest.
Fourth largest, and now people can't withdraw their funds, and that just happened. People didn't see it coming, and so. I'm not sure if that would make much global news anyway, but it's a big deal. But so much is going on. There's the another refugee crisis going on where you've got people, making it through Turkey, getting into Greece, and it's a big deal. And it's very, very, I would consider it, I'm just going to say globalist orchestrated, because when you watch them coming across the water, they're coming across in uniform boats. They're the pontoon boats, but nice ones. They're like
super nice.
Like 60 grand.
I want
a
one of
piece.
those. Outboard motors on those things that are bringing them over are top notch.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a second. You're telling me these people, bless them, that are in a hard situation, got to one shore and went, oh, let's all go buy some boats. In fact, let's all go buy the same one, and it looked like D-Day. I mean, here they come towards Greece, and you're like, son, come on now. Somebody is orchestrating and paying for this. So, it's like, do you think that a lot is going on with the coronavirus right now, which is a serious issue, but as the coronavirus right now is a scapegoat for everything, including the GSM, including like the crop issues that you're talking about, all of a sudden we have the perfect smokescreen for globalists to lose their mind doing things they've always wanted to do. And also, it's an excuse for everything. Anything that happens now, they can blame on the coronavirus. It's perfect.
Yeah, because the book I wrote, The Climate Revolution, talked about, as we enter into this grand solar minimum, the amount of distractions in the media to keep your minds away from the most important thing. Like everything else going out right now is pretty much just chaff in the wind, because we need the food first, food second, food third. It's the most important thing that any country can have, or you can have. Your chance of getting the virus is like so slim. So it's almost a moot point to even talk about, are you going to get it? It's almost going to be a no-show for everybody. But the fear it's creating and the distraction of There need to be an enormous amount of distractions as the food production globally declines, and we're coming into yet another incredibly poor planting year, and the yields are going to be just as bad. We had a rip in the magnetic field, which sent down white aurora with no sunspots, no CME, no solar wind, and our magnetosphere actually puffed out off the planet. It looked like a giant cotton ball, out in space, because there's a fair few satellites out there that can measure the compression from the solar wind onto our magnetosphere, that coating around the safety net of our planet that keeps space radiation out, as well as puts a lot of drag on space rocks, so any space debris, so it burns up higher in the atmosphere. That there was a literal crack in that. It ripped open, and these white aurora appeared around the edge and the periphery of the rip. So something electromagnetically happened in the magnetic field of our planet's protection at that same time, and that was the thing. It had puffed out incredibly wide, and Daniel over at he did a report on that with the two satellites side by side. So when you see the magnetic field jumping out that big and then it rips and you get white aurora, those are incredibly intense. When you're looking at the aurora anyway, usually you see the nice pretty green ones, and maybe they become sort of purple. Like the higher the intensity, the more powerful they are, the color spectrum changes. So it goes from green, and then you get nice purples. But when you see reds, and then white is the most intense. So the saying was always like this: they saw red aurora in Cuba during the Carrington event, and everything north of that got completely fried, the telegraph wires, all that types of thing, because they'd seen the red aurora in Cuba. So further north, it was so white and blinding white of the aurora that, they thought it was daylight outside. People got up not knowing it was still the middle of the morning because it was so white light because of the white aurora. Seeing white aurora right now with no solar wind is a spooky thing. So what's really happening? The distraction needs to get bigger to keep you away from these natural events. And I detailed all that in the book that I wrote, Climate Revolution. That was an expected feature of this moving forward into 2021 and past, was the distraction factor needed to go uber past a Hollywood-esque film, because the more you would start to see that the amount of food available and the price jumps, including in that, would rip through the economy anyway, because if you're going to pay double or triple, 5 times, 4 times, whatever X or percentage of X for your food, that's the most important thing. You can't not eat. Right? You could not drive your car and then carpool. You and I could carpool. We could walk. We could ride a bike. There's other ways to transit around and do things within a 5-mile radius of your house. Get to work. You could work online. There's a whole bunch of things that you don't need fuel for. So that was one thing we could go away from, although it was tumultuous in 2008 and 2009 with the high prices. But you just can't not eat. Try not eating. I did an experiment. What was that? 2 years ago. I tried not to eat. I did 2 meals a day. And then I dropped down to 1 meal a day, and I became non-functional, where I had to start eating again because I couldn't do anything. 1 meal a day and you're non-functional. You'll stay alive, but your brain capacity is not there. You're sluggish, can't focus, can't move, tired. And I did that on purpose just to experiment on myself of how much food would it take before you start to see real effects. So you can't cut into your budget that much and then eat once a day because it won't work. So knowing that the food starting to have some real difficulties this year. This is 3rd year in a row of extreme planting difficulties and extreme low yields across the planet. And then whoosh, we get this right now. Quirky timing, that's all I'm going to say. Unusual timing on this to, like you said, explain everything else away. So, hey, this didn't get delivered, the virus. Economy's down, the virus. Anything, the virus. Oh, the moon's red, virus. You know what I mean? The sea just turned red over there. It's the virus.
Yeah. All the electronics are fried, and the paint got burned up everybody's car in the city.
That's the virus.
It's the virus.
The UVC striking the planet, melting the tires. That's the virus. Didn't you know? You didn't get the memo.
Yeah. Yeah, really. You didn't pray enough to your picture of your mandatory picture of Greta. If you had done that, then the virus would have spared.
Greta could have saved us. Yes, she could have.
Because she can see the virus, and in her benevolent heart, she can wish it away from your city if you pay enough taxes and you pray hard enough. Well, yeah, that's the thing. We are in quite the moment, and definitely everyone should check out David DuByne's book, Climate Revolution, because everything we're talking about is mentioned in there, and also solutions to it. And one thing.
Oh wait, Craig, I want to say that it's not a ploy to plug the book, but it's just that the progression of it. It's already been what I wrote about is saying that this is the distraction, and here it is in front of us. So I put that book out last year, saying, look for massive distractions, super Hollywood-esque. And it's not for me to say, hey, buy the book, buy the book. It's like it was already written about in the book I did. So as we come into this phase here, here's the distraction. So continue. Sorry. I just wanted to put that caveat in there. That's not about trying to sell anything. For sure not. Information flow.
Yeah, I mean the book is there, and it must be great to see that. If one has interest, it'll be linked to in the show notes. Check it out, and we're in quite the moment where, so we have the Corona smokescreen, and the GSM is still real. Nothing has changed. It's something we had to kind of realize over here was we're kind of. When the Corona issue first started, we were a little bit captivated by it and a little bit freaked out by it. And now we're just it's just normal. We're prepped up. We hedged our bets. We did what we can. What else can you do? It's one of those times where it's nice to be a prepper anyway, because you're already sort of halfway there. Then if something strange happens like this, you just get those few extra things you need. You live a little bit different. We're watching the news. We're like, well, we're still going to go and do things. We're still going to go and live, but we're watching. You know, if this town gets a little hot for the virus, then we'll just kind of sequester until it blows over, hopefully. But it does seem that our pandemics are natural for a GSM, aren't they? Don't they usually happen during these times? And which, I'm still on the fence. I really don't know. Is this a bio weapon, or is this, because all viruses are really, or is this just a natural aspect of a grand solar minimum that we have, a nasty virus out there?
I don't know. Sasha Dobler, who does Abrupt Earth Changes, he did that ebook, a spectacularly written book, talking about the 14th century. The Black Death was accompanied by this grand solar minimum and an enormous amount of cometary debris coming in. And people putting those two pieces together, as when it started was the massive amount of cometary debris, as well as these earth changes they were seeing. It wasn't there, and then suddenly they were talking about the Earth ripping open and all this sulfur gas all over the place, and then more space debris coming in, comet showers of the likes that we've never seen, even in hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, what they describe is like, what was that? Possibly closest thing we could have seen was Southeast U.S. in 1810, when they said that like 10,000 shooting stars came down in 1 hour for a whole night. That would have been intense to watch. But, going back into the 14th century, and then suddenly the sickness came after the earth split open and there was sulfur gas everywhere and the skies lit up with these unbelievable, they thought the heavens were falling kind of stuff. And then boom, right after that, you had that Black Death started. So his whole book is like trying to put all this together historically of nothing, two huge events that would have shaken our world today. And then suddenly they had everything that moved forward. So we get a rip in the magnetic field with white aurora. I mean, did it make world news? No. It should have, because it hasn't happened before. It's the first time. Oh, no, 2018 happened once also, but it was smaller, and it came down red aurora at that point, not white. So it seems to be an uptick even in terms of intensity and color spectral change on I just don't get it. If there was no particles coming down the field lines to create that and get that agitation up there in the atmosphere, what caused those white aurora? It's almost, there's no causation for it. See, that's still the baffling part, is there's no explanation for it. And it's hard to explain something that literally appears out of the ether with nothing to make it appear out of the ether. Electrically, makes no sense. Particle charge wise, nothing. There's no particle charge. So how does this thing even happen up there? It's like saying a fire started in the middle of the air right in front of you, and then you're like, well, how did that happen? It's something exactly like that.
Yeah, and as we are entering a grand solar minimum and our ionosphere is getting weaker, then we get weird things like that happen. And that's where I think about let's say the mainstream media. Along with the weather report, they should have Ben Davidson from Suspicious Observers, his little couple-minute take every day. That should be part of our weather support. Then there's, I hate to get her name wrong, but I think it's Tamantha Skov, I think her name is. She does an amazing space weather weekly show. And and she's very, very good. And so you start looking at it and realizing that at this time, we should be looking at our space weather, the sun, very, very closely because we don't have a roof on this house anymore. So sunspots, which used to be, well, when your grand solar maximum and your ionosphere is strong, who cares? Whatever. Coronal mass ejection, unless it's horrifically big, who cares? But now, solar flares, coronal mass ejection, sunspots, everything, it really needs to be a part of, if you're looking at daily weather, that's great. But just as important at this time is the daily space weather. What's going on? What's coming? We should be watching these things because recently, here's one that I think people are still scratching their heads about. The Schumann resonance went up to 170.
What? The highest I'd ever seen it before was like 45 to 50.
Yes, it blasted up to 170 for a little while.
What was the KP doing at that point? Remember, we talked about the KP index Schumann resonance interaction there.
I think it might have been around 4, the KP, which is a little high, So you start thinking, like, we're seeing these weird things happening, like a Schumann resonance of 170. What's with that? How'd that happen? Probably something to do with space weather, I would guess, but I don't exactly know what. So yeah, it seems that it is time to be watching space weather because with the grand solar minimum, space weather is as important as the weather on this planet. And as the weather on this planet keeps getting crazier, well, I guess you got to watch that too. So we're just living in craziness on this ball. Everything's out to get us.
Love it, enjoy it, and remember, you're going to be in constant change and flux from this point forward. So if you can thrive in that environment and survive there and understand it, that's a new state of matter, if you will. It's almost like plasma, constant change, which almost none of us are used to living in because everything has been so sedate and stable for generations, plural now, for almost everybody watching this. I understand if you're over in the Middle East, it might be a little different. If you're on other parts of the world, it might be a little different where there's much flux going on and change every day. But for us, it's been so stable, so congenial for us to get blubbery, if you will. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of changes. Like in another electrical effect that, remember the Philippines eruption just last month? That kind of died off the thing. But it was the most electrical active eruption ever recorded. So when you talk about ionosphere and maybe there's some electrical conduit or connection going back up there, the amount of the electrical strikes and visible lightning coming out of that eruption was the most ever recorded ever, like exponentially above what was witnessed before. Now, I understand that we just only have started taking images and videos of this stuff since the 1980s, but so far, at least since that time, visibly what they saw is the most electrical, you can see those lightning strikes coming out the periphery of the eruption sides there. But they slow down the film and they count them like you would do anything else. But this had the highest count ever. I gotta wonder if there's a correlation there between the weakening magnetosphere and if our planet's overcharged, it would have to try to release some of the electrical overcharge, like a capacitor. And we're seeing a lot of ground to sky lightning lately as well. So that'd be the same thing. Eruption, that lightning's trying to get out, or the electric charge or overcharge, if you will, is trying to move out.
Yeah, it's like that used to be a very, very rare occurrence, but now it's getting to be far more common. The ground sky, ground to sky lightning. I still have not seen it. And we get some amazing lightning out here in the desert, but I do understand that it's becoming more prevalent. So yeah, everything is changing, and I think that's something that we have to ground into here is that the corona is just, I try not to mention it. It's funny. Like, I feel like it's some kind of a weird sigil. I'm not afraid of it, but I call it like the Spratomagusis or the joke or something like that. But I don't want to belittle people's suffering because I know it's very serious. But it's like, it does seem like we talked once before when we called that little chat, the end of ancient evil. The end of ancient evil. Yeah, the end of ancient evil, and we are seeing an end of ancient evil. I mean, we are seeing, I think, as we get more cosmic rays, as we get more energy into the Earth plane, onto the Earth ball, of course, the planet, it's multidimensional to me. As this is happening, we are seeing evolutionary leaps for human beings. There's people who are truly becoming powerfully self-aware. They're just changing. They're becoming like electrical beings. I mean, people are evolving that are ready for it. And then a lot of people are losing their damn minds. It seems like you don't have much choice. Either get with it or
Get swept.
Or get swept. There was one person who was saying as the Schumann goes up and the Earth energy goes up and you've got more cosmic rays coming in and the Earth literally begins to spin faster, it's like there's this vortex made of more positive energy, and if you atone with it, then you're good. If not, then you just kind of get slung off. And nature, anybody who's a nature lover knows when you go out in nature, it's beautiful. It's all benevolent. It's all good. But on a certain level, damn, it's messed up. I mean, anybody who's ever seen coyotes eat a fawn, it's gonna, it's like, oh, it's so brutal and so awful, but it's also beautiful and it's just fine. And so it seems like we are in a time right now in our evolutionary, you could say spiritual evolution and also biological evolution, where it's all good and it sucks. It's beautiful and it's also very, very horrific. And I think we really need to find a center to exist from, self-awareness to exist from, because if not, the fear is going to creep in. And so how are you dealing with, if it's bothering you at all, the intensity, the volume of fear that is out there right now? Just take your pick on the 11 causes of it. You know what I mean? But it's there.
Unless you know it's a narrative and then you're like, oh, it's a storybook I'm reading or it's a movie I'm watching, and you put that much into it. That's it.
Yeah. You go like, I never really liked daytime soap operas anyway.
Yeah, the doctor.
Just Days of Our Lives. Oh, gosh. Well, it does.
Sanity. Oh, yeah. One last thing.
Good.
It seems that a lot of the higher powered, I shouldn't even say high powered, but these higher CEOs, Jamie Dimon, suddenly has heart surgery today. Oh, he's going to be out of the loop. Where did he go? He's going to be gone for months, plural. Like he just disappeared today. Where's he going to go? Like you see, and then you saw last week, the top 3 CEOs of financial houses also retired at the same time. And you're starting to see an enormous amount of these higher CEOs that are in charge of Fortune 500s just disappear. Where are they going? Why did they retire suddenly all en masse these last couple of weeks? They say they're going to retain their position until the end of the year. But the retirement en masse, and then this whole thing about everybody's going to have to work from home. It's like, hey, we're retired. Okay, work from home. I'll never see you again. Hey, we're going to head down to wherever we're going. Because that Jamie Dimon thing, I think that was for me, that was it. That was the signal that they're all running. They're all running.
And that makes me wonder.
And this whole thing, work from home, is going to be a perfect excuse for everybody to disappear, and then nobody will know, nobody will care, nobody will ask the questions because they're working from home. No more interviews.
That makes me wonder, like, what do you think that they're running from? Because I know one thing I do wonder about is, how much is real and how much is not.
I know.
We know I can say what I like about the grand solar minimum, or not like about it, or I just understand about it, is that, being a person with a technology background, charts and graphs work for me. I get it. You can go, okay, yep. Okay, we're heading into that again. All right, that's easy enough to see. So you can go, that looks like reality to me. But then I look at the global financial fallout that is happening right now. And that's kind of, I would say I don't have fear, but I'm just very interested. It's interesting to sort of look at the current coronavirus situation in the world, because I don't know who's in control. I don't need to know, but like you're mentioning some of the CEOs and such, making a run for it. How in control are the controllers? Because if this is orchestrated, then I would say who? I mean, I heard one person who I do respect their intellect, and he had some reasons why he was saying this, but he was like, what if China, being a very old country, they have records that go way back, as we know, they have companies that are hundreds of years old.
900 years old, single family, been running for 900 years. This kind of stuff, unheard of. Well, in Europe, you have the old money, but outside of that, you got China.
Yeah, and so you got this 900-year-old company. You've got, a nation that made a great big wall to keep change out, to keep the power on this side. And it makes me wonder, that person made a very good case for, could it be Humanity's been fighting wars forever. Could this just be another war? How we fight them changes. The battlefield changes. What if China just knowing that, hey, look, we deliberately became the center of manufacturing. Now we're going to shut off, crash the world economy. We'd already gotten ready for this. Then when we come back online, we rule this place.
Yeah, and they're willing to take a good 500 million loss of the population and to keep on trucking. So half the population's not 500 million is not even half. It's like 1.4 billion. So to take 500 million away, I mean that's still just a fraction of the whole over there. And the way the art of war and just the different ways to perceive reality and the enemies and how to wait and do different maneuvers that unless you read these types of books, unless you're a strategist, most people wouldn't get it. So I highly encourage you to read The Art of War, and you can find the breakdown in areas where they'll just break down the important points and they'll put some analysis behind it where you can just read the most important quote out of a certain page or a certain section there, and then they break it down. But you can see how it maneuvers. Put your troops against the water so they have to fight twice as hard. Just wait and lie, and there's an enormous amount of strategy behind this art of war. And if you haven't read the book, I encourage anybody out there, delve into it. There's an enormous amount. You can find all this stuff for free online. You don't even need to buy the book.
Oh yeah, it's on. If you like listening, it's on YouTube. Several different versions of it.
Yeah,
you can listen to it. And another one along those lines is by McNamara, the guy who was Secretary of Defense.
Is that Robert McNamara? Yeah, that was Vietnam War, right?
Yeah, and he was also around during World War II. I forget what his position was, but he was there. And he made a documentary. Other people made it, but it was of him, and it's this kind of saggy-looking old man sitting there, McNamara, and he puts down his rules for managing conflict, and it's called the fog of war. And he gets into the fog, why we can't see during conflict, and he was like, of course, one can have their opinions of McNamara. I mean, I'm not saying he's a nice guy. He's not necessarily a nice man, but he does know what he's speaking of because he was there. And he does make the case that we need to, something that America has failed to do in every war was understand their enemy. As in, do you know who they are and do you know why they're fighting? And that's one of the things that I think about from the art of war, and then like from the fog of war and other strategies. When I do think of that as China, you become the manufacturing center of the universe, and you go offline, then you own that place. And
factories are still there. You can't pick them up and take them with you.
Yeah, and people will say, "Oh, well, we'll just make it here." Bless you, but it's not that simple. Not overnight. And already we have piers that don't have Connex boxes in them. So, I mean, the disaster is already here. We just haven't felt it because it's not here until next week.
Yeah, and another thing about the art of war, now you have to go back in Chinese past into the 1950s. Now, they were very sure they were going to be fighting America. So they required every woman to have 6 children. And if you reached the 6th child, you got an award from the state. And they were called hero mothers, like Yingxiong Mama, Yingxiong, like a hero. So they have huge expenditures and liabilities for Social Security now, but think about that. During that time, they used all those massive labor pool to build themselves to the world leader in manufacturing. So were those the troops to bring up the world manufacturing in order to get everybody relying on it and then pull the plug so they would have an advantage? Because when you say these troops to go to war, I mean, as soon as you say that, why would they have so many women? Well, they were going to fight America. They already knew in the 1950s they were going to have some conflict. So think about that and doing it the soft approach way. So we always think of the word war, it's direct, like that guy over there, and then this guy over in our trench and whatever. You kind of think like that. What if they took it, you're right, like a completely different direction where they used those as troops to build up the manufacturing capacity in order to get everybody relying on it, and then that was the way to overtake. Because you remove the medicines, you got them. Take away the dailies, you got them. So maybe that Yingxiong Mama or that hero mother thing of having 6 children each actually worked, and it was in a completely sly way that we never anticipated. We thought it was a liability for the country to have so many extra people there that were all men, like hanging out 20, 30 million extra men over women in the population demographic in the art, say like 20 to 30 right now. Way too many. They're just causing all kinds of social problems. But prior to that, think about the buildup and the use of those people for the labor pool to build those factories, to work those mines, to work the electrical coal production, whatever it is, the delivery, the truck drivers, whatever. They were utilized in a certain way that we didn't think about until right now.
Exactly. And because, the way we fight wars has, like I say, it evolves, it changes, the arena changes. And like during and after World War II, a lot changed where you had FDR as president, and you had lots and lots of Russian agents who got into our government at that time, and they were very close to him. And then some rather good scholars think that maybe FDR was never really playing for this team anyway. And then you've got some amazing work by like Joseph Farrell, great writer, great and kind of investigative historian, great storyteller. He talks about, like in his book called like the Nazi Aficionado, a Nazi International. He makes the case for, the Nazis were never German and they didn't lose. Basically, they just left. Germany got its ass handed to it. They went underground. So see, a lot of things changed. They went from, let's be a country and try to beat the rest of the world. Okay, that didn't work. Let's just hang out with the ancient evil and work from there. That's where the power is. Who wants to be a ruler? That's not where the power is. It's like in Game of Thrones, that great series. The old guy says to the young king, like, you think that crown gives you power? To the king. Because he knew how the world worked. It's like, So, yeah, it's funny. Do you think a nation state gives you power? So, yeah, it's funny. We are in an amazing time. So I thought I'd just run that theory past you because, they are definitely, if you wanted to have, like, more territory, whatever people fight wars for, I don't know, but they do. And there is always those dreams of empire, bigger, more, conquer. Well, China's they've just started softening up the world pretty damn good.
Yeah, their trade routes are expanding, and they are trying to reclaim their old glory of the Silk Road, the Southern Silk Road, the Ocean Silk Road, or the Coastal Silk Road, extending all the way to Africa, where the new growth zones are emerging. Control that entire swath of food production across the planet, all the countries in there, and imagine the vast empire you could have if you could control. But there's too many people there now, so you have to do something to get rid of them. Like you say, soften up the landing beach. Maybe this is it. Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw it out there because, conjecture. It's always fun to speculate because I think right now we're in a time of, I'd run this one by you. I don't think anybody really knows what's going on.
I don't. I'm just trying to get through it every day myself because you always get another piece of information that makes no sense from the previous ones. And you're like, wow, what else is going on now?
Exactly. It's like, because the Grand Slam minimum, in a way, that one for those who understand it, who've been listening, they understand that, and hopefully they are going about hedging their bets there. Really, as we've spoken before, living a better life. Grow some food, live somewhere that's appropriate. Like I know, like for us here, we've really gotten into hydroponics. And I think one thing people have to realize is that none of your plans are going to work overnight. You're going to have to start doing them now. You know what I mean? Whatever you think you're going to do, it's going to be part of your daily life because nothing just works. Like I tell you what, as David, you probably know very well.
Mistake after mistake. You're going to have to figure it out, and you're going to have to muddle through it because even if those high-tech vertical grow tubes that we had from Taiwan Hydroponics, those plants don't respond to certain heat or light conditions. So regardless of how good your tech is, if you don't know what the plants that need to go in there and which season, you got nothing.
Yeah, it's true. We've noticed that where hydroponics, it looks really easy.
Looks can be deceiving.
But I tell you what, it's one of those things. When it comes to money, like Ice Age Farmer says, you can't print food. Well, you might have the best organic nutrient in your hydroponic system. You might have the best little like medium for your grow pots. You might have the best lights, but you can't make those damn seeds grow. They grow if they feel like it. And so, and so sometimes you're like, these don't work. Well, that's the thing I recommend to people. Definitely, whatever you plan on doing, try harder. Basically, do it now and try harder, because it's especially with difficulties in supply lines and such like that. The pressure's on. Get to it, because we've been hydroponic growing for a while now, and I feel like I'm still a beginner. At least I can say, yes, we can make things grow now, but then you start getting into, what if you didn't have power? What if your grow lights aren't working? Well, that's going to suck. Do you got your microgreens working, which don't quite need grow lights, really? You got plan A, B, and C, and are you growing all these things and enjoying it? Really, I would say to people, if you're buying greens from the store,
grow them yourself.
You are not there yet.
And one thing for me, I'm struggling with a cold this year. I came back here unannounced, unexpectedly, and I've been growing too, and I have a lot of ideas to try to grow things, and I wanted to start the garden. I came back, even growing just in trays to get things to sprout out. It's been too cold, so you can't leave them outside. You can't use the natural. Like the timing on a clock that you need to ring a bell and alarm. Oh, I got to bring those things in. Oh, it's too cold outside. Can't put them out today. Oh, we need to put them out. It's going to rain too much. The trays might splash. There's a lot of, if you're going to have to do it by yourself, you can do it. You could pour the water in your tubes and whatnot, but I mean, what if you forget one or two times, or then it throws the plant off sync as well. They were used to getting water, just like a dog used to getting fed one day. If we don't feed it for 3 days, you're gonna tweak it. So it's a learning curve, and I hope everybody does start to get ready. I think it's more the grand solar minimum than all this other garbage and distraction that you're seeing across the media landscape at the moment. My personal opinion, but I have 1 minute left. I need to exactly run at 6:30 here, a ding on the button. So thanks for watching. And Craig, thanks so much for hosting me. And I think, these ideas moving forward, if you take a look at the grand solar minimum and the food production losses, and then really take a look at how everything's kind of morphing around that and what we're seeing with the distractions now, it makes much more sense than just this thing evolved out of nothing and now it's here. Timelines overlap. Valentina Zarkova's research has been removed off the internet, and things that are proving the point of the grand solar minimum gone now. I mean, why is it just gone suddenly? Too many quirky things happening, but I'll let you work it out. I hope everybody listening, can make your own solid decisions based on the information we presented here today. Don't listen to us. Don't listen to me. You got to do your own research. I want you to disprove everything I talked about, and that'll give you a good indication of, trying to disprove it is the best way, because you might actually find something in there that you weren't looking for, and like, hey, I didn't hear about this. That guy he's making some sense now.
Definitely. Yeah. And people do keep in mind that with like the whole COVID-19 virus issue, if you're under 60 and you get it, you basically have no chance of dying whatsoever. If you're over 60, it's not so good, but they're getting better at treating it. So don't believe the fear porn. You're not going to drop that if you get it, as far as we know. Okay, well, you take care.
But that causes buying, so you better go buy too. All the panic buying's on. I hate to say go buy, but if everybody else is panic buying, stripping the supply chains, I mean, you, just out of common sense, should be in there too, as long as you don't get sick around all the people. If things are going to get sold out that quickly, you would be an idiot to stay home and go, well, they bought everything. I just didn't feel like it was a real, because I don't have anything now, but it's all bought out, but I didn't think it was real. That's kind of head in the sandish too, so you have to look at the situations and kind of play it by ear. Would you go and buy stuff if you see a line a mile long outside the stores trying to get in to buy food? Maybe you want to get in that line too. Not sure. Up to you.
Yeah, if you haven't been a prepper, get with it.
If you haven't gotten ready, it's way too late. I'm sorry.
Sorry to tell you. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Anyway, Craig, as always, thanks for your time. And yeah, if you want to wrap it up,
I will.
Yours.
I will. Thank you so much for being on the show, David DuByne. Check out Adapt 2030 on YouTube. That's where you'll find David's material always coming out. Get David's book. I mean, I know he's not plugging it, but I am. Get it. It's essential. It is worthwhile. Get it, print it, and share it with your family. It is important. And this is Radiant Creators. It's always great to have David DuByne on. And I hope this was entertaining. We just wanted to catch up and rap about all the insanity that's going on. And I hope that you enjoyed it. Take care. See you again soon, everybody.
Bye for now.
Bye.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.